Hey guys, I'm Mark Ryan. This is Super Review, and this is not a full review of the Apple AirPods Max. This is going to be kind of an initial impressions, a bit of a hot take, because I just unboxed these things last night. I've spent about 2 or 3 hours listening to them last night before I went to sleep, and then another hour this morning. And while I've got to spend at least a week reviewing this thing and really putting it through its paces, I do have a couple of initial surprises with the sound of the AirPods Max that I thought I would go ahead and talk about now. A couple of the surprises, well, one of the surprises is interesting, not necessarily bad, but the other one, I kind of have a feeling Apple's gonna change. We'll see though. So, the first surprise with the Apple AirPods Max is just the general tuning and the tonality of it. And for this discussion, we'll go to my table real quick, just to show you why I have certain expectations, all right? So, let's go to the Apple AirPods, AirPods Pro, and even the Beats Solo Pro, right? These are Beats. This is what you would expect for a bassy headphone from Apple if they were gonna give you a bassy headphone, but you don't. I feel like with all three of these headphones, Apple kind of went with a relatively safe, neutral-ish sound signature that, you know, has got fairly strong mid-range, somewhat relaxed treble, and decent bass emphasis, but not overwhelming bass emphasis. So that's what I was expecting going into the AirPods Max, is something with similar tuning, but perhaps with stronger technicalities. Surprisingly, that is not the tuning that Apple has gone with the AirPods Max. In fact, the tuning on this headphone is, I would say, kind of bassy actually. It's generally, I think, a very, very warm tonality. You've got some emphasis in especially the sub-bass frequencies, but just generally the bass is fairly forward of neutral and fairly forward of all three of these, including the Beats. Additionally, the surprising part of the tonality is that the upper mid-range, I find, is actually surprisingly relaxed. Like, the vocals are not very far forward. In fact, I feel like vocals are a little bit recessed here on the AirPods Max, which again, I find surprising given the fact that the way that these things are tuned is not that way. These things, again, are generally fairly neutral-ish with, you know, a little bit of bass boost here, a little bit of bass boost here, maybe a little bit of treble heat there. These are pretty different. Let's see, what else can I say about? So yeah, I talked about the bass, talked about the mid-range, which is surprising. And then the other thing that's surprising about the AirPods Max, and this is the thing that I kind of expect they're gonna change, and I have some expectations that they can change this sort of thing with firmware updates to the AirPods Max, is the treble. The treble on this is very surprising for a couple of reasons. One, it's not a safe treble, which again, you get safe treble with those other Apple headphones. I found the treble on this is actually kind of forward and a little bit on the tizzy side, and frankly, a little bit fatiguing, right? I'm listening to these things for a few hours last night, and it didn't take too long for just the treble to be a little bit bothersome, frankly. And that's not totally unheard of in the audio space, right? There are some headphones that just do that. Typically, they tend to be geared toward audio nerds who like, you know, a little bit of treble detail. But it's very surprising from Apple, and frankly, I'm gonna say the word surprised a lot, but I'm surprised that they actually ship them with this treble tuning. It's just a little bit aggressive in the treble. Certain sounds like hi-hats, right? If you're listening to music with hi-hats, and I'll give you some examples in a little bit of songs that I found exacerbate the treble issues here with the AirPods Max. But hi-hats just kind of have like a really sharp, piercing tiz to them. Certain tracks that have issues with sibilance, you know, there's things that you can do with headphone tuning to really tame down sibilance, and I don't feel like the AirPods Max actually really do that especially well. So that is my general surprise with the AirPods Max. So I'll go through a couple of tracks that I noted that I had, you know, some issues with the treble on these things. So for example, Tool. I have the Tool album. Actually, I forget the name of the album, but the particular song, Prison Sex, it's got those pretty aggressive hi-hats, and I found it was pretty, you know, fatiguing here on the AirPods Max. But even something a little bit more mainstreamy, a little bit more poppy, like Michael Jackson's PYT, that's got some like kind of playing in one of the ears, and again, I found that surprisingly fatiguing on the AirPods Max. And like that fatiguingness, that fatigue that I'm getting might not be as surprising on some more audio nerd oriented headphones, but on a mainstream headphone like the Apple AirPods Max, I do find it surprising, and I really do expect them to adjust that with some sort of firmware update. There's a chance they won't. I imagine within, you know, the week or two that I spend reviewing these things, I will have figured that out, but again, it's still surprising. Some more tracks like Radiohead's Reckoner. If that's a song you've ever heard, check it out on a decent streaming service. I consider that kind of like a bit of a treble hell case. It's just very aggressive in the treble, and on a headphone that is not very smooth in the treble, that will be a harsh song to listen to. And I felt like on the AirPods Max, Reckoner was a little bit harsh. A song like FKJ's Vibin' Out, a really cool track, actually worth checking out. Really nice vocals, but that's a track, and also Yazoo's Anyone. A couple of tracks where the vocals can be a little bit on the sibilant side, and I found that the AirPods Max surprisingly did not tame down that sibilance. So that's kind of my initial hot take here on the Apple AirPods Max. I think there are a lot of things that this headphone does pretty well, and we'll get into those things in the full review. I think generally like Soundstage and Stuff is actually pretty impressive on this headphone, but I'll save some of that stuff for a longer evaluation. And I just wanted to get out those two things that I thought surprised me. Again, that general tonality, much bassier and a warmer tune than I expected from Apple. And then that treble tizziness, it's not very safe. Not what I would have expected from Apple. Frankly, I would like to see them tone it down a little bit, which you don't always hear from me. Toning down treble, me, super review guy saying that? Yeah, that's my take. Anyway, that is the end of this video. If you found this helpful or useful or interesting or whatever, go ahead and hit the like button, helps me out. You can subscribe to the channel if you want to be around for the next review. Ding the bell. YouTube will let you know when I do my review of the Apple AirPods Max, and I'll see you in that video. Cheers.